Bible today, or if you want to just read up there, the great thing about it is we can put it right up here on the screen on this beautiful fall background. Romans chapter 5 is where I'd like to start here this morning. And I'm going to begin reading with verse 12. The thing I was thinking about, and as you probably figured out about me, I like to stay close to basic fundamental things. Because just in my own life, I find that the closer I stay to basic fundamental truths, the better things work. And things easily get very complicated, and it's easy to lose sight of the fundamental facts of what this Christian life really is, and the fundamental facts about what kind of foundation it rests on, and whether we're talking about just living a Christian life, or whether we're talking about answered prayer, or whatever aspect of our relationship with God. The thing that I think is the most important thing to keep in mind is it all rests upon one single fact. Not a fact, a person. His name is Jesus. And we must always be careful to keep Jesus in the mix. And not only just in the mix, the primary focus of everything. And it really is all about Him. And I think if we could, as we were talking about the sugar-coated lies versus the naked truth, if we really could understand the real truth of it, we would be surprised how much it really is all about Him and how little we have to do with it except to believe in it. And that's the way I like to explain it, that our part in it is just a responsive part. It's to believe. It's to trust in. Believing means to trust in, to rely upon, to place your confidence in, to lean upon. All of those thoughts are implied in it. And so what I find is sometimes when we lose sight of that fact, that it's really all about Him and what He does, what happens is we struggle and we wrestle with trying to believe. But what I've found in my own life is the more I focus on Jesus and what He has done, what He does do, and the bigness of Him, believing and faith is easier. It's easy to believe when I see just how great He has been, what He has done, and what He does do. So I'd like to just look at that a little bit here this morning. Romans chapter 5, beginning with verse 12, we read this. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. Now the one man, of course, he's talking about in verse 12 is Adam. Now Paul really doesn't want to talk about Adam. That's not his subject. His subject, guess who his subject is? Jesus. Jesus is his subject. But he uses, in Romans chapter 5, verse 12, he uses, first of all, Adam, because he's going to make a comparison. And so he says, sin entered into the world just by one man. Not by everybody, but by one man. In fact, he says, if you notice what he says here, by one man, that's Adam, sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men. Because of what Adam did, this condition of death passed upon everybody else by this one man. And then it says, for that all have sinned. I think I could paraphrase this and say, because of that all have sinned. See, Paul is saying here that you're not a sinner because you sinned. You're a sinner because of Adam, and we sinned because of what Adam did. He conveyed upon us, of course we're talking about prior to our Christian life primarily, but Adam conveyed upon the human race the nature of what he was and what he did. That's the point he's making. Verse 13 says, for until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed where there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is a figure, or a type, or a representative, or a foreshadowing of the one who is to come. He says, even those who didn't sin just like Adam did, still death reigned over them because of what Adam did. In other words, this one man, Adam, caused all of this for everybody else. Even if people after him didn't do precisely what he did, nevertheless, the results of what Adam did were felt by everyone after him. That's the point he's making. Now again, he doesn't really want to emphasize Adam. He doesn't really want to emphasize sin. He wants to emphasize Jesus, but he's using that as a comparison. Verse 15 says, but not as the offense, so also is the free gift. Adam committed the offense, but what Jesus offers is a free gift. And he's likening it, but he's making a negative comparison. He said it's so much greater. It's not like it, it's greater. The free gift is. For if through the offense of one many be dead, much more. You see, he's saying that this is so much more powerful what Jesus did. if we can accept the fact that through the offense of one, and by the way, some people can't accept that fact, but here it is. I don't know what else we could say about it. I was talking to a man one time who he had all these little ideas, little doctrinal ideas written on a card. Now, I don't know who wrote the card, but he was reading to me off of this card, and one of the things he read to me off of his card is points of, doctrine, points of, this is what I believe. And he said, well, one of the points was, we are guilty and judged for what we do, not because of what Adam did. Well, that's not what Paul says here. Paul says just the opposite is true. What Adam did conveyed this sin situation on everybody. Now, this is important because what he's getting ready to say is in the same way that Adam conveyed a broken relationship upon the human race, Jesus did something. This one man, Jesus, in other words, Adam messed it up, but one man, Jesus, fixed it up for us. Let me read it again. Verse 15. Not as the offense, so also is the free gift. For if through the offense of one, many be dead. That's Adam. Much more, the grace of God. The grace of God is such an important thought. And what Fran said kind of goes along with it, just to believe in His love. The grace of God, if we want to define what it is, sometimes people say grace is unmerited favor, which is true. I like that just fine. But it's bigger than that, and it's more than that. I would say grace is what God does for us all by Himself, just because He's God, which we didn't have anything to do with, just because grace talks about the goodness of the one who gives. Grace is always associated with the gift. And sometimes the Greek word for grace, which is charis, C-H-A-R-I-S, is sometimes translated just plain gift. It means something that God does for us that we don't deserve, that we can't pay for, that we don't merit. It has nothing to do with us and our what we merit. It has only to do with Him and how good He is. But the free gift, let's see, which one was I? Oh, I'm on verse 15. Much more, the grace of God and the gift of grace. Notice how he emphasized that, which is by one man. One man. That's the point I want you to see. One man, Jesus Christ, has abounded unto many. The many is us. Verse 16. And not as it was by the one who sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation. Now, this is not what we think. This is not what Christians generally think. Christians generally think, well, every individual out here does their thing, and if you mess up, then your individual sins bring individual judgment and condemnation. But you know what? If you think that way, you're leaving Jesus out of it altogether, and you're not really agreeing with what Paul is saying here. Paul says here, it's the one who sinned brought condemnation and judgment upon everybody else. But the flip side of that is, the free gift is of many offenses, or after many offenses. Even in the face of many offenses, the free gift is justification. Verse 17 says, for if by one man's offense death reigned by one. Notice how he keeps emphasizing one man. If by one man's offense death reigned by one, much more, in a much greater degree, much more powerful, much more effectual, much more they which receive the abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Jesus Christ. Now we are, as Christians, we are those who Paul describes us as having received the abundance of grace. Abundance means more than you need. An overflow. Isn't that good? Not just barely enough, but an abundance. You know, if you have an abundance of something, that means you've got more than you can deal with. You've got more than you can use. More than you know what to do with. Right? He says, we have received an abundance of grace. I like to always emphasize that because many times, not every single day, but often I get in conversations with people who say, well, I think I've done too many bad things. I think I've failed too many times, and God's through with me. That's not true. He's got more grace than you're ever going to need in your life. The abundance of grace, and we are the recipients of that. And then he says, and the gift of righteousness. A gift, notice that he says gift, not a debt or something, a wage, but a gift. He says, we have received the gift of righteousness. Righteousness just means being in right relationship, or here's a better way to say it, being in compliance with everything that God requires. Now that's kind of bold to say it that way, that's why I like to say it. It means being in compliance with everything that God requires. When I say it that way, we immediately think, well, I've got to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm trying to do better, and we start looking at ourselves. Listen, here's what I'm trying to emphasize. We've got to quit looking at ourselves and look at Him, by this one man, Jesus. And He has given us a gift of being in compliance. Now, if you set out on your own to try to be in compliance with everything God requires, you might get close to it, but you're never going to get there perfectly. You're always going to have, as long as you live in a body made of flesh, a body that you got, by the way, from Adam, a flesh. See, Adam conveyed upon us the flesh. Did you know that? As long as you've got flesh to deal with, there's always the potential that there's going to be some kind of something go wrong. No matter who you are, no matter how long you live, no matter how holy you get, you could always do. You've always got, as long as you're in this body, something could go wrong. And even if you don't do it, you might be thinking it. You know I'm telling the truth, don't you?